So good morning and welcome to the Caring for the Veteran Caregiver virtual conference. Thank everybody so much for joining us this morning. I know it's a little bit early. My name is Candace Christensen and I'm the coordinator for the Caregiver Coalition of Northeast Florida. So prior to the pandemic, we were able to come together in person. And at that time, we would be honoring our veterans together as the coalition did every single year. But even though we're meeting virtually, our cause is no different. Today is dedicated to the honoring of those who have served our country and to the caregivers of those veterans. So I want to quickly go over some housekeeping items before we move on. This session is being recorded and it's going to be posted to our website. Cameras and microphones are going to be turned off except for those of our speakers. And we ask that you remain muted through the duration of the conference. If you haven't already, you may want to turn on speaker view in the top right corner of your Zoom screen so that you can better see the speakers. If you find yourself with any questions during the presentation, if you could please type them into the chat box and I'll make sure that they get answered. I'll read them out loud to our speakers when we get to our Q&A. And then lastly, in case you run into some technical difficulties or anything, please be patient. We're going to try and resolve them as quickly as possible. So with that out of the way, I'd like to start off our conference with a special welcome from the Honorable Lance Robertson, the Administration for Community Living.
Hello, and welcome to the Caregiver Coalition of Northeast Florida's virtual caregiver workshop. Lance Robertson here. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Aging and the Administrator for the Administration for Community Living within the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. I'm sorry that I can't be with you today, and am grateful though that the Caregiver Coalition put this together, and what a great opportunity for all of you to get together via technology. This is such an important issue. So let me start off and tell you a little bit about our agency. Our programs provide services that support older adults and people with disabilities so that they can live independently in their own communities. We're also a federal advocate for older adults and people with disabilities, as well as their families and caregivers. There are nearly 55 million family caregivers in our country today, and that number is growing fast and could be underrepresented. And let's be honest, you're the backbone of our country's long-term support system. Without you, we simply could not support people in their own homes. It's incredibly rewarding, but I also know it can be hard. And it certainly hasn't gotten easier with the pandemic. And that's why supporting families and family caregivers is at the core of ACL's mission. Each year, ACL's National Family Caregiver Support Program directly provides respite, education, and support groups to nearly 800,000 family caregivers. We also have several programs that specifically support caregivers of people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. Through a third program, ACL has been helping states improve their capacity to provide respite services for caregivers, one of our greatest needs. And we also are working across federal government and with partners from outside government to help improve the way our country supports family caregivers overall. And another important group of people we serve at ACL is veterans. The programs ACL administers under the Old Americans Act serve veterans in a variety of ways. For example, an estimated 129,000 veterans receive home-delivered meals, and another 178,000 participate in programs at community centers and other congregate meal sites. Approximately 26,000 receive transportation services, and 22,000 receive caregiver support services. And we're also working at the VA to help make it possible for veterans who are eligible for nursing home care to continue living at home. The Veteran-Directed Care Program is unique, and it puts the veteran in the center and in control of their own program. They use a flexible budget provided by their VA Medical Center to hire family, friends, and neighbors to deliver the care and services that they and their families decide they need. In addition to providing veterans these services and helping them avoid nursing homes, the program also has made it possible for some veterans who've been living in facilities to transfer back out into the community. So I want to wrap up today by saying thank you. First, thanks to all of you who have really worn the cloth of our nation. I'm proud to have served in the U.S. Army, and I'm proud of the fact that so many of my colleagues at ACL, more than 10% of our staff, in fact, have also served our country. We even have a few who are still serving. Veterans have sacrificed in the name of preserving our nation's independence. You deserve to maintain your own independence throughout life and regardless of disability. And at ACL, we believe that one of the best ways we can honor their service is to help make that possible. And thank you also to those who are serving as caregivers today. We are committed to doing everything that we can to help you continue to support your loved one while you're also taking care of yourself. With more than 10,000 people turning 65 every day, and the number of people living and aging with disabilities also increasing, you're among the most important people in our country today. We quite literally cannot support them in living the lives they desire and deserve without you. So as a country, we need to make sure that you have the support that you need. And at ACL, that's something we're working on every single day. So thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to
Hello.
Earl Evans now. He's the Executive Director of Baptist Agewell Institute, and he's the Chair of the Caregiver Coalition.
Good morning, everyone. Since 2008, the Caregiver Coalition of Northeast Florida has been the go-to resource for First Coast residents seeking to take better care of themselves and a chronically ill, disabled, or aged loved one. Providing a compassionate network of support and access to critical resources, the Coalition is a partnership of leading healthcare, aging, and senior service organizations that serve those caring for others in our region. Florida has the third largest veteran population in our country, with more than 1.5 million veterans, spanning from World War II through post 9/11. Standing behind many of these veterans are caregivers who often suddenly and selflessly step into the role as caregiver. Today is dedicated to recognizing our caregivers and the sacrifices they make to support those who served our country. Know that you aren't alone, and it is our mission to connect you with the support and resources created to care for your veteran and yourself. Joining us for our first session this morning are representatives from the North Florida, South Georgia Veterans Affairs. Gabriella Tapia, General Caregiver Support Services Coordinator for the North Florida, South Georgia Veterans Affairs Caregiver Support Program. Elisa Arevalo, Caregiver Support Coordinator here in Jacksonville. And Chariot Hester, Social Work Supervisor with the Jacksonville VA Outpatient Clinics. Welcome to our speakers, and thank you for participating in today's program.
Hey, good morning, everyone. As Earl said, my name is Gabrielle Tapia. I'm a licensed clinical social worker with the VA Caregiver Support Program, and I am the coordinator for our program of General Caregiver Support Services. Next slide. So the mission statement of the Caregiver Support Program is to promote the health and well-being of family caregivers who care for our nation's veterans through education, resources, support, and services. Next slide. So the focus of the Caregiver Support Program is to improve the quality of life of our caregivers so that they can help veterans live to their fullest potential. So we accomplish this by helping caregivers navigate the VA healthcare system and by accessing resources. We also provide training, education, and support not only to our caregivers, but also to VA staff and community partners. So the Caregiver Support Program is comprised of two unique programs that serve and support the caregivers across all eras. The first program is the Program of General Caregiver Support Services, abbreviated PGCSS, and more commonly known as the General Caregiver Program. And the second program is the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, abbreviated PCAFC, and commonly called the Family Caregiver Program. So for our General Caregiver Program, we define a general caregiver as a person who provides personal care services to a veteran who requires assistance with one or more activities of daily living, or who requires supervision or protection or instruction based on symptoms or residuals of neurological care or other impairment or injury. And we'll get into this, what this means, a little later on. Next slide. So we provide a variety of resources, referrals, education, training, and that includes providing services to caregivers through our resources and referrals. We provide assistance navigating VA services, including those available as part of the veterans' health care and benefits. We provide a variety of resources through education, training, and support, and some of those programs include Building Better Caregivers, our Caregiver Support Line and monthly educational calls, Reach VA, which includes both individual coaching and telephone support groups, our self-care courses, peer support, and support groups as well. We also provide counseling when it's in connection with the treatment of a veteran's disability. So as I said, we provide a variety of programs, resources, education, and trainings. One of our programs is the Building Better Caregivers 6-week online course. It's an interactive workshop for caregivers of veterans, and it assists caregivers with enhancing communication and decision-making, managing caregiver fatigue and stress, improving caregiver sleep, diet, and personal health, learning ways to cope with caregiver issues, and engaging in shared experiences with peers. One of the great things about Building Better Caregivers is that once you have completed the courses, you become part of their alumni community, and you can continue to work with other peers in that community. So we have the Caregiver Support Line, which is operated by VA clinical social workers Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The VA Caregiver Support Line responds to calls not only from caregivers, but also from veterans and community agencies who are seeking information about VA caregiver resources and services, as well as general VA resources. So the Caregiver Support Line links callers to their local Caregiver Support Coordinator, and they provide information about assistance through the VA. They can also offer supportive counseling when needed, and you'll see at the bottom of the screen, that is the number for the Caregiver Support Line. We offer telephone and educational calls, and this is facilitated through our Caregiver Support Line, and the theme of these calls is to care for the caregivers. So we offer 12 unique topics a year, and those topics include things such as setting boundaries, asking for help, and anger management. So each topic is offered 3 times throughout the month at different times. So a morning, afternoon, and evening session. So for those caregivers that work during the day, you can hop onto an evening session, but if you're somebody who has more free time in the morning, you could hop onto a morning session. So you can really pick and choose which calls you want to engage in. So calls are accessed through a 1-800 number, and you can access these calls from your own home. And then they have additional caregiver-led calls that are hosted throughout the year so that caregivers can share personal experiences with other caregivers. So we have Reach VA and telephone support, REACH stands for Resources for Enhancing All Caregivers' Health. And these are evidence-based programs that provide interventional support to caregivers. So for our REACH coaching, which is a one-on-one coaching, this is delivered in 4 one-hour core sessions. There is the option to add additional sessions if needed. And this can be done in person or by telephone or telehealth. Currently, due to COVID, we're only offering these sessions via telephone or by telehealth. Our telephone support, which is the telephone support groups, those are delivered in 6 one-hour core group sessions, and they do have the option to add additional sessions if needed. They support skill building through problem solving, stress reduction, and positive thinking and mood management. So they do focus on some specialized curricula, and that includes topics ranging from ALS, dementia, MS, PTSD, and spinal cord injury. They do offer general telephone support groups and one-on-one coaching as well. And this REACH program was developed by the VA Memphis Caregiver Center and the VA Office of Rural Health. So we have caregiver self-care courses as well. And these are offered by trained facilitators from the VA Memphis Caregiver Center. They're provided in person with caregivers at local VA facilities. And these courses are approximately 3 hours in length. And the topics include things from taking care of yourself, stress management, utilizing technology, problem solving, and communication. We also offer peer support. So the VA Caregiver Peer Support Program links caregivers of veterans in a mentor-mentee relationship. So experienced caregivers are trained to serve as mentors, and we match those mentors with less experienced caregivers so that they can provide personalized guidance based on their own experiences. And many times our mentees graduate to become mentors. And this program is available to caregivers of all eras, and caregivers can serve, like I said, as both mentors and mentees. So a lot of you may have been hearing about the changes to our program of comprehensive assistance due to the Mission Act. So the Department of Veteran Affairs Mission Act expanded veteran eligibility for the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers. So the current regulatory requirements for the program of comprehensive assistance, or the family caregiver program, is that veterans would have had to have sustained or aggravated a serious injury in the line of duty on or after September 11th, 2001, and require personal care services to perform one or more activities of daily living, or require supervision and protection based on symptoms or residuals of neurological impairment or injury, or require the assistance of a family caregiver to live safely in the home setting. And it's important to note that the care must be required as a result of the serious injury. So when would caregivers of veterans from all eras become eligible for the Family Caregiver Program? So expanded eligibility to veterans is happening in 2 phases. The first phase, which begins next month, will expand the Family Caregiver Program eligibility to include eligible veterans who incurred or aggravated a serious injury in the line of duty or in the active military, naval, or air service on or before May 7th, 1975. That would include our World War II, Korea, and Vietnam era. The final phase of expansion will occur 2 years following the first date of expansion, and it will expand eligibility for the Family Caregiver Program to include veterans from all eras, regardless of when an eligible veteran's serious injury occurred. So how does the VA define serious injury for the purposes of eligibility for the Family Caregiver Program? Under something called the final rule, a veteran, including a qualifying service member, must have a service-connected disability rating of 70% or more. It's important to note that this can be a single disability rating or a combined rating. Also, VA will no longer require a connection between the need for personal care services and the qualifying serious injury. So how does the VA define a veteran's inability to perform an activity of daily living for the purposes of eligibility for the Family Caregiver Program? So the VA defines an inability to perform an activity of daily living as a veteran or service member requiring personal care services each time he or she completes one or more of the following. So that's dressing or undressing, bathing, grooming in order to keep clean and presentable, adjusting prosthetics or orthopedic appliances, toileting or attending to toileting, feeding oneself, and mobility. How does the VA define need for supervision, protection, or instruction for the purposes of eligibility to the Family Caregiver Program? So the VA defines need for supervision, protection, or instruction as the individual having a functional impairment that directly impacts his or her ability to maintain his or her personal safety on a daily basis. So with the Mission Act expansion, there were some additional services that were added to the Program of Comprehensive Assistance. So those services include financial planning, as well as legal services for our primary family caregivers. So other services available through the VA include adult daycare, home-based primary care, skilled home care, the Home Health Aid Program, home telehealth, respite care, and that includes both in the home and in the community, and home hospice care. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So our adult day health care is a program veterans can go to during the day for peer support, companionship, social activities, and recreation. So this program is for veterans who need skilled services, case management, and or help with activities of daily living. And those activities include help with bathing, dressing, fixing meals, and taking medications. This is a great program for veterans who may be more isolated or for caregivers who are experiencing a high level of caregiver burden. So adult day health care can also be used in combination with other home and community-based services like a home health aid. So home-based primary care. If you qualify for home-based primary care, your care plan would include primary care visits at home by a physician, nurse practitioner, or physician's assistant, care management through a nurse practitioner, physician's assistant, or nurse, coordination of services by a social worker, therapy visits, and that includes physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech, and mental health services, as well as nutrition counseling from a dietitian, help with managing medications. So since home-based primary care is part of the VHA standard medical benefits package, All enrolled veterans are eligible if they meet the clinical need for the service. Our home-based primary care services are for veterans who are what we consider to be homebound. And it's important to note that a copay for the home-based primary care services may be charged based on your VA service-connected disability status. So one way to know if you would be responsible for a copay for the program is to speak with your VA social worker or case management to complete an application for extended care benefits, also known as the VA Form 1010EC. Once that form is completed and submitted to the eligibility department, you would be informed of whether or not you would be responsible for a copay for this service. So our skilled home care is short-term healthcare services that are provided to veterans who are homebound or who live far away from the home. And the care is delivered through a community-based home health agency that the VA is contracted with. So this program is for veterans who need skilled services, and those services include things such as physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, nursing, and sometimes even social work. Skilled home care can be used in conjunction with other home and community-based services, such as a home health aide, which we'll talk about next. So our home health aide is a trained person who comes to the veteran's home and helps the veteran take care of himself or herself and their daily activities. So just as with the skilled home care, our home health aides are provided through the community through our contracted agencies. They're not nurses, but they are supervised by a registered nurse who helps assess the veteran's daily living needs. So they help with activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, fixing meals, taking medication, and they can also be used in conjunction with other home and community-based services. If you're interested in a home health aide, the best thing to do is to speak with your social worker or case management for the Veterans PACT team to get a referral to the home health aide program. We also have home telehealth. It's also known as care coordination, and it's a service that allows the veteran's physician or nurse to monitor the veteran's medical condition remotely, and they use special equipment for that. So veterans can be referred to the telehealth program by any member of their primary care team. Enrollment is approved by the VA provider for veterans who meet the clinical need for the services. So the care coordinator gets, excuse me, the care coordinator gets health information, which provides, through personalized questions answered on a special form, and then checks in with the veteran by phone if needed. So if the veteran's health measurements don't seem normal, the care coordinator talks with the physician or nurse, and then they get back to the veteran and caregiver with the next steps for their care. Respite care is a service that pays for a person to come to a veteran's home or for the veteran to go to a program while the family caregiver takes a break. So while a veteran gets respite care, the family caregiver can run errands or go out of town for a few days without worrying about leaving the veteran alone at home. So as I said, respite can be offered either in the home or in a facility. When you're looking at respite in the home, respite is typically offered from 4 to 6 hours twice a month. And when respite is offered in an inpatient setting, it can be offered for up to 10 days. And for both in-home respite and respite, which is in a facility, you cannot exceed 30 days per calendar year. Respite can be especially helpful to veterans whose caregivers are burned out, and it's helpful for veterans of all ages. And respite care often lowers the stress that the veteran and their family caregiver may feel when managing the veteran's long-term care needs at home. So I wanted to just, again, talk about our National Caregiver Support Line. I spoke about this earlier. The number is there on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And so if you have any questions about the Caregiver Support Program, or you're not sure how to get in touch with your local Caregiver Support Coordinator, you can call the National Caregiver Support Line. Another good contact is our local caregiver number, which I believe Candace is going to post that in the chat. So either of these numbers would be good contacts if you have questions about the caregiver program. So thank you so much for having me today. I believe Candace is moderating our questions, so myself, Elisa, and Chariot will do our best to answer any questions you have about the General Caregiver Program, the Family Caregiver Program, or if you have any questions about additional VA services, like in-home services.
All right, thanks, y'all. I'm going to put the local caregiver support number here in the chat. Can you read me that support number out one more time, just so I can make sure that I have it right?
Sure. It's going to be 352-376-1611, and the extension is 107587.
107587.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add that if you're not currently in North Florida, South Georgia location, I would advise you to contact the Caregiver Support Line national number.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the number that Candace just posted is locally, so that's for North Florida, South Georgia. And as Elisa said, if you're outside of the North Florida, South Georgia area, then the best number to contact is the national number.
All right, thank you so much. That was a lot of information in like kind of a short amount of time. So if there are any questions, you're more than welcome to put them into the chat. The chats go to me and I will read them out to Gabrielle and Elisa, and we'll just have a little Q&A, a little discussion. So I have a question. How does a home care agency become a provider, or where can they apply?
Okay. So if you work for a home care agency and you're wanting to become contracted with the VA, the best person to contact would be our home care office. And it depends if you're wanting to become contracted as a skilled home care provider versus a home health aide or unskilled provider. We have two separate offices that handle that. And I don't have the numbers with me right away.
I'll post them.
Okay, thank you, Chariot.
Yeah, you can send them to me if you need to, Chariot. And I will also be sending out, probably next week with the recording of this session, I'm going to be sending out a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation, and then any resources that weren't included either in the email that went out last night with the fact sheet and the one pager, and anything that's not in the PowerPoint, I'll make sure to include that in the follow-up email with the recording. So Chariot, if you send me that number, I can make sure I include that in the email so that you guys will have all the materials and everything, just in case you missed something. So I have a question here. How does the caregiver support connect with local hospice providers?
So caregiver support, I would say, does less of that. But typically, when we have somebody that needs a referral to hospice, that would come through their primary care team. So as a caregiver support coordinator, if we are speaking with one of our caregivers or veterans and they express interest in enrolling in hospice, or if they have questions about hospice that we're unable to answer, we would typically refer them back to their primary care provider. And then the primary care provider can place a consult for home hospice if it's indicated. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. I have a question here. She said, I was on the email for monthly sessions, but have not gotten anything over the past few months. Was this put on pause because of COVID?
Is she?
That she's part of the program?
The question is, was on the email list for the monthly session. So the monthly sessions are still going on, correct?
Yes.
I'm assuming she's talking about the telephone education sessions.
That's my guess, that she's talking about that. And if it's that, then those have continued because they're
Yeah. And depending on whether she's part of the general program or the family caregiver program, if she's part of the family caregiver program, she can get with her caregiver support coordinator and they can send her. We actually just got a list of the upcoming calls for the next year.
correct.
And so that caregiver support coordinator can provide that.
It could be that every year you have to re-enroll. Like, it's not something that you enroll once and then it continues happening every year. So it could have been that she finished the last year of calls and then we have to enroll her for the next year. So definitely a call to the coordinator.
And also for those monthly educational calls, the best way to get signed up for the next year of calls is actually just to call the caregiver support line, that national number, because those educational calls are facilitated through our caregiver support line.
Thank you. So yeah, I think reiterating that national caregiver support line is probably the #1 resource because it connects you with your local caregiver support. And if you have any questions about the Caregiver Support Program, you would call your local Caregiver Support Coordinator.
Correct.
Which, Gabrielle, that's you for South Georgia and North Florida, right?
So I'm the general program coordinator. So for the entire North Florida, South Georgia region. So if they're not in the family caregiver program, then I would be the person that they would be speaking with in terms of any of our services through the general program.
Correct. Once they are accepted into the family caregiver program, then they get assigned a local coordinator that will be handling their case management, their needs, anything that the caregiver needs.
Perfect, thank you. Did anyone else have anything to add?
I would like to add that we know that the expansion is generating a lot of questions. And definitely, I'm sure that the caregivers want to know if they meet criteria or if they can review some of the changes that the Mission Act changed. And you can visit the VA Caregiver Support website. We released over the summer some frequently asked questions that go over each step of the changes in the Mission Act. They talk about the new veterans that are going to apply, the veterans that are currently in the program, how it might change. So please visit our website to obtain those FAQs and go over all of the changes that are currently happening in the program.
And if you need the website, it's www.caregiver.va.gov.
Okay, I just put that in the chat so that everybody had it.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add, I know with the VA caregiver support line, from my understanding, it's not a requirement that they have a primary care provider through the VA, but for respite services, home health aid services, and home health care services, the veteran has to have a primary care doctor because we need a doctor in the VA through primary care to initiate and order those services. Mm-hmm. So we do get a lot of caregivers that call and say, hey, I need help. He may have a doctor with Baptist or MCCI or Conviva, but we can't take orders from an outside provider. So we're not going to create a barrier to you getting the services. You would just need to only see the VA doctor once a year to recertify those services. So you can keep all of your primary care doctors, any doctor you want on the outside. You only need a VA doctor to initiate those services. So that doctor can say, I've met this veteran, I've seen him, he does need these services, and we can get the referrals initiated.
Thanks, Harriet. I had a question that said, if we are in Northwest Florida, is there a different, would that be a different caregiver support coordinator, a different area?
We go as far as Tallahassee.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then
then if it's like, well, if it's the Northwest, that would be the furthest, yeah.
and then if it's beyond that, should they just call the caregiver support line?
I would call the caregiver support line because it might fall into another VA system.
Okay, got it. So what's the phone number? Yeah, so you would call the caregiver support line to get your local caregiver support coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have any other questions at the moment. Was there anything else that you all maybe wanted to spend a little more time on? Like I said, it was a lot of information in a short amount of time. Was there anything that you wanted to cover more thoroughly? Or I know there were different programs like the REACH program. Anything there that you might want to talk a little bit more about and expand on?
I'll talk about the home health aid a little bit more because I know we get a lot of misconceptions about that program.
Mm-hmm.
The home health aid program is personal care. So the veteran has to need someone to help dress him, bathe him, feed him. A lot of times people misconstrue it. The worker that is coming to home health aid, they're not maids. They can't do yard work. If they're helping to give the veteran a bath, they will clean the bathtub after they give him a bath. If they fix a meal for the veteran, which is like a sandwich, or they heat up something, they may wash the dish, but they're not coming in the home to clean the house. They're not able to check mail, and they're not sitters. So we may have a veteran that may need someone to sit with him, but the home health aide, they're there to do a service, complete the service, and then leave the home. So we do get a lot of confusion about home health aid and the services that they provide. Now, what's different with the in-home respite, that person is there for those 6 hours. They are sitting there with the veteran with respite services. But in terms of the person that comes to home health aid, they're there to come in, hi, Mr. Veteran, would you like would you allow us to help you give you a bath today? Do you need me to help them get dressed? Typically, the home health aides are available during the day, like the business day. It is very few agencies that provide evening and weekend services. So some people say, well, I need someone from 6 to 9 or from 7 to 10. Those are very hard to come by. So if you are interested in those services, just when you talk with the social worker, please let us know what your expectations are, because we don't want to bring a home health aide in the home and you're confused with the agency, or there's tension between you and the agency because you may be expecting something that isn't what the program provides or the availability of the program. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we see, is the expectations of, they think the person will come in or they'll drive the patient to the store. Those are things that the home health aide isn't able to do.
And I would say, just to add to what Jared is saying, if you do need somebody to come in and help you with housekeeping or things like that, please let your primary care social worker know, because typically what they can do is link you up with community resources that might be able to provide that service. And then also keep in mind that for our home health aid program, the veteran is reassessed. I believe it's now every 6 months.
Every 90 days.
Every 90 days, okay. So every 90 days, that veteran will be reassessed. And the amount of hours that you get approved for the home health aide may change depending on that veteran's level of care needs. So if a veteran starts out in the program and needs minor assistance, but let's say the next year they have declined, then they may be eligible for additional hours. And so that's why they do those reassessments. So it's very important to keep open communication with your primary care social worker if there's a change in status.
Thank you. So a few more questions I have here. I have a question for the form, the 1010 EC. Are there any other specific forms that will need to be completed aside from the 1010 EC?
The 1010 EC is only needed if the veteran is either non-service connected, meaning they're not getting any income from the Department of Veteran Affairs. If they're non-service connected or they're less than 10%. So we have some veterans that are 0% service connected. So if you as a veteran are 10% or higher, you don't even need to fill out the 1010 EC form. The only time the 1010 EC form is required is if you're less than 10% service connected, and that's for respite services or adult daycare. So most of the time, the regular standard home health aid services, you don't even need that form. So if you have questions, you can always reach out to primary care social work, and we'll let you know, hey, you don't need that form. But if you do need it, we obviously will let you know.
Thank you. I had a question about volunteer opportunities. Do you have volunteer opportunities, and who would be the contact for that?
Yes, we have tons of volunteer opportunities. We are starting back to enroll our volunteers. Due to COVID, we put a stop for volunteers because we wanted to make sure that we were limiting exposure and social distancing. But we are getting ready to move into the phase where we will allow volunteers. I'm going to get Jennifer True's number that I can post, and this is for Jacksonville. I know we have Miss Nikki Adams in Gainesville. It just depends on where you're trying to volunteer at. But if you are in the Jacksonville, Florida area, we love volunteers. Love them. So we would be happy for you to come and volunteer with us. We do food programs, things for Christmas. We typically do a back to school bash, all kinds of things and services. So if you want to volunteer, please come on, and we will be happy to have you.
And I was looking for the voluntary services number. I think I may have it, so.
I only have the one in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I gave Jennifer True, and then I'm going to give them Nikki Adams' phone number as well. And she's our chief of volunteer services. So if you're outside of the Jacksonville and you're looking to volunteer in other places, maybe St. Augustine or Palatka, just get in touch with Miss Nikki Adams, and she will gladly direct you to be able to volunteer. We love volunteers.
We do.
Okay, I'm putting these phone numbers in the chat for everybody listening as Chariot sends them to me. So we have Nikki Adams and then Jennifer True. I have somebody in Fernandina Beach.
It's my turn.
Nassau County.
So that
Well, it would depend. They would still contact Nikki if the closest clinic to Fernandina Beach is it's split in the middle between Jacksonville and St. Mary's. So if they're interested in St. Mary's Clinic and that's closer, you would contact Nikki. But if you're interested in coming to Jacksonville, like the Jefferson Street Clinic, then contact Jennifer. And our volunteers, I will say, you do have to do a background check. We're very protective over our veterans and the people we expose them to. So you will have to do a background check and get fingerprints and things like that. But outside of that, we are happy to take you.
Are there any other requirements in order to become a volunteer besides a background check?
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
And over the age of 18. Over the summer, we do have a 13 and older program where we take the kids over the summer and they volunteer. But outside of any regular time during the year, they have to be 18 and over.
Got it. Thank you. So I had a question about the support line. Is it 24/7 or are there specific hours? And if there are specific hours, do you have a 24/7 helpline?
So the caregiver support line is from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. To my knowledge, we don't have a 24/7 caregiver support line. The only 24/7 line that I'm aware of is our Veterans Crisis Line.
Correct.
Okay. I'm putting those hours in the chat just so we have them. And I think I put the phone number up towards the top, but that was just to make sure we have it, that was the 855-260-3244. So I've got that there in the chat. I had a question again about the volunteers. Is there a TB shot or a flu shot required for volunteers?
No. I know they do the TB screening. Flu shot, if you want to get a flu shot, you're welcome to get a flu shot. If you do not want to get a flu shot, you can fill out a form saying, you don't want to get one, but you will have to wear a mask during flu season, which right now everybody's wearing masks anyway. So that's your preference if you want to get a TB and a flu shot.
Okay, thank you. And the Veteran Crisis Line, the 24/7 number.
The 1-800-273-8255. And then press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.
Okay. 273-8255. Got it. Okay. Do you have any special services if the veteran has memory loss or has dementia?
For the caregiver or for the veteran?
Like, is there any services for like different care services? Because it is kind of a different level of care required.
Okay.
I think they mean for the veteran. Whenever we do the home health aid screening or the respite services screening, we have to put a diagnosis in there for the veteran. So we gear our care based on their diagnosis. A person with visual impairments would need different services from a person with Parkinson's. So we do our best to try to cater towards really what their diagnosis and their needs are. Every veteran with dementia is not the same. We have some that may wonder, and we have some that just may not just know who you are, but they're just as pleasant as can be. So we really, that's a kind of a hard blanket question to answer, but every level of care we provide is patient-centered. So it's different for every patient. You just have to tell us what your issues are, what you're struggling with, and then that way we can try to do our best to meet your needs.
Got it, thank you. So I have a question about the support group. How many people do you usually have in your support groups? Is there a limit?
So I'm guessing that's for the REACH, because we have the REACH telephone support groups. So REACH is something that's newer for North Florida, South Georgia. REACH has been around for a little while, but it's newer to us. We're kind of just getting around to having those groups. So I would say, typically we try to keep the support groups around between 6 to 10 people, just so that we do have, that we have enough in case somebody's not able to come, that we can still have conversations, but they're not too terribly big. And then for, just so that everyone's aware, for our REACH support groups, the way that we're doing them, there are different diagnoses that REACH kind of focuses on, which is that ALS, MS, PTSD, dementia. So if you're interested in a REACH telephone support group, the best thing you can do is either reach out to the Caregiver Support Coordinator if you're in the Family Caregiver Program, or reach out to myself if you're in the General Caregiver Program, and let us know what type of group you're interested in. If none of those diagnoses really apply, you can let us know that you're interested in the general group. And what we do is we create a list of people and what their interests are. And once we have enough people for the support group, then we would initiate the support group, and we would call those folks and say, you know, we're getting ready to start a group. Would you like to join?
Wonderful, thank you. And is that something you had mentioned earlier about the re-enrollment for the monthly telephone education programs? If you reached out at one point for the support groups and shared that information, is there a point where you need to call back and say, hey, let me re-enroll, you know, if you haven't already joined the support group in order to be contacted?
Those are different. So
Yeah.
the REACH one and the caregiver support groups are different because the caregiver support programs are done nationally. And so that's why it requires every so often to re-enroll. But the REACH group, it's locally with us, and it really depends on the availability, what group is going. Like right now, there's a group going, and so once that one is done, then we're starting another one. So that would be the caregiver reaching out locally to the coordinator to make sure that she's part of that REACH group.
And it also really depends on what they're interested in. So for those groups that are through our caregiver support line, those are more educational groups, and they're less structured like a support group. So REACH is very much structured as a support group, whereas the educational phone calls through our caregiver support line, those are to provide education on certain topics.
Right, like burden, how to manage behaviors. They're just going to talk and give you advice about how to handle certain situations and how to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you reiterate how to sign up for those telephone support groups? I mean, the educational groups?
So the best way to do that is to call the National Caregiver Support Line and just say, you know, I'm part of the Caregiver Support Program, and I'd like to sign up for the monthly educational calls. If you're not part of the Caregiver Support Program, you can still call that number and sign up for the calls.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have just a few more minutes. I want to leave a little bit more time if anyone has any other questions they would like to put in the chat. But in the meantime, I'd like to ask you, what are maybe the top 3 or 4 takeaways that anyone viewing that you'd want them to take away from this presentation?
I would say with the services, the education and the trainings that we provide, a lot of our caregivers can feel very overwhelmed, and it feels like, you know, they may want to engage in something, but they feel like, I really just don't have the time for this, or, you know, my schedule is crazy, and how am I going to be able to fit this in? So it's important to know that we have so many different services for all types of schedules and people. So if you're somebody who the only free time you have is between 1 and 3 in the morning, and that's really when you would want to engage in something, we have our online Building Better Caregivers. You can log on any time of the day and work on that. If you're somebody who you want some more education, but you can only be available in the early morning, then maybe our telephone education groups are for you, because they offer, you know, those calls at different times during the month. So if you are interested in engaging in some services, please know that we'll work with you and with your schedule to try and find something that best works for you.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
Just know that we're available to answer any questions that you have. You know, even if you feel like you've asked the same question 1,000 times and you're still confused, call us. You know, we're here to answer questions and to help you out. And we get a lot of calls to our caregiver support line that, you know, people think, I don't even know if this is caregiver related. But if we can answer the question, we will certainly do that. And if we don't know, then we will find somebody that does know. So I know that the VA is massive and there's just so much information and it can feel very overwhelming, especially if you're new to the VA. So if you have questions, if you are working with a veteran who's visually impaired, we have a visual impairment services team. You know, we can get you support through that. If you have questions about service animals, we can get you information on that. So, you know, anything that you need assistance with, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll do our best to link you with the services that you need.
Not without leaving behind that, and I've had many calls like this, if you just want to vent because you're frustrated, you are tired, you want to listen in ear, somebody that understands what you're going through, because we have a lot of experience, you know, handling caregiver burden and giving you advice. Just call. Just call, because I don't think so far since I've been in this program that I've had anybody say, you know, this was pointless or no. Usually it always ends up being a relief for the caregiver, just having somebody to talk to, connect them to the services. And this is precisely why PAC social workers and the Caregiver Support Program are here, because we understand that it's really, really difficult to navigate the VA. We social workers often are frustrated too.
Yes.
So it's really important to understand that it's okay, it's confusing, and we can just, you know, try to reach out. We've been on journeys reaching out to try to get the service or whatever need that the caregiver has, because that's what we want to do. We want to reduce that burden. We don't want you to be worrying about all this stuff in the VA and managing the care, because we understand that your priority will be the veteran. You guys are doing the legwork. You know, it's you guys are really in the front lines, staying with the veterans. So we are just very grateful that you're at home taking care of our veteran, and we just want to be there for you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You guys have been really great. It's been a lot of information, so I really thank you so much for sharing. I don't have any other questions in the chat, so if anything does come up, feel free to put it in the chat. We're going to keep the session open until we have to prep our speakers for the next presentation at 10:30. So thank you so much. To reiterate, if you do have any other questions or if you need more information, you can call that General Caregiver Support line. The number is there in the chat, or you can visit the website caregiver.va.gov. That's also in the chat. So I would like to launch a quick poll. It's going to be only 4 questions I think I had on there. And it's super quick, just while you're waiting on the next question or the next session to start, excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and launch that right now. And then in the meantime, we're going to take a short break. You can join us again at 10:30 for the self-care for the caregiver with Catherine Thomas. She's from Yoga for Change. And if you're just waiting for the next session, you can take this time to stretch and get some fresh air outside. And then I'm going to put a few links in the chat for you. They're from Yoga for Change. It's to learn a little bit about the organization. And there is also a short mindfulness activity there for you. And I'll put those in the chat. But in the meantime, stick around. We're going to be logging back on at 10:30. And Gabrielle, Lisa, Chariot, thank you so much for joining us today. If I get any other questions in the chat, anything else to send to you, I will let you know. I'll connect you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.